Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com. I'm back again today to do my part 2 of reviews of comics that I read that came out during the week of April 3rd. So first up is Indestructible Hulk, number 6. This is by Mark Waid, of course. Walt Simonson on art, I believe, doing a 3-part story here. I have to admit, and I did talk about this on the last podcast that I released, and if you're interested in listening to my podcast, you can go to longboxreview.wordpress.com/podcast, and you can take a look at all those at one place anyway. It's also on iTunes. Anyway, but what I talked about there was that I was not looking forward to the Simonson issues of Indestructible Hulk, but that's being followed up by a Daredevil team up in Hulk here, so I'm sticking with Indestructible Hulk for a while. But back to this issue with Waid and Simonson. So this comic starts out with Banner and his hand-picked team of scientists trying to open up a dimensional portal using a sliver of Thor's hammer, which of course they do, and they travel to the land of the Frost Giants. Of course, that attracts the attention of Thor, only it's not the modern-day Thor, the Thor that we know in the Marvel Universe. It appears to be a past version of Thor, and I'm guessing it's going to be the Thor that Simonson wrote back in the day. So basically after that, this fight ensues between the Frost Giants. Banner turns into the Hulk, as usual. And the Frost Giants are about ready to pounce and basically think that they can basically wipe their frosty land with Hulk. And Hulk sees Thor's hammer there on the ground because Thor got knocked out or knocked away. And so he, as you saw on the cover here, the Hulk is trying to pick up Thor's hammer, and at the very end he does. And so the thing about Thor's hammer is basically whosoever is worthy shall have the power of Thor, something like that, right? So I found that really interesting. I really want to see what that's all about. So there you go. That was a pretty good issue, I have to say. Still not a big fan of Simonson's art, especially the current stuff that he's doing, especially in this. But it was okay. The story is good, though. That's really what drew me in. So I enjoyed it. Next up, Legends of the Dark Knight, number 7. I love this comic. This is such a good, it's out of continuity comic, telling just interesting Batman stories. This one is by written by Joe Harris, cover by Jason Masters, and colors by Jim Sharalampitis. It's by Jim. Anyway. This is it's basically a ghost story, but Arkham Asylum plays a big role because a lot of the inmates are involved. It starts off with Maxie Zeus saying some odd things as he often does, but it's just weird. But basically, there's a point in here. There's a couple interesting points. One is that the Joker in here hangs himself, and I mean he's dead. And they show him his neck's broken, he's dead, he's in the morgue, but he comes back because he's being possessed apparently by this ghost of a little girl, and the ghost of a little girl also causes the bats in Batman's cave to go crazy, which causes him to go into the Batmobile to set off this ultrasonic thing to disperse the bats. But then the Batmobile gets possessed and drives out of the Batcave, basically taking Batman to the place where the little girl had been buried, which brings it back to who the murderer was and why the ghost is doing what it's doing. There was where I mentioned that the Batmobile bursts out of the Batcave being possessed, but there's this interesting little panel here. I'm going to show it to you. Visually, it's interesting. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in, I guess, realistic terms. It's comics. Why am I even saying realistic, right? But here's right there, if you can see that. See all those little blocks? you know, because that's a hologram covering the cave entrance, right? I don't know. I liked it. But seeing the Joker, like I said, the Joker had hung himself. That just creeped me out. But you know, and of course, in the end, Batman wins the day, and the bad guy gets his just desserts. It was really interesting. All right, let's see. Next up, I got this Miss Fury. This is from Dynamite. I've been enjoying the Dynamite stuff. This is by Rob Williams, illustrated by Jack Herbert, with colors by Ivan Nunes. This cover is by Alex Ross. I really like that cover. Let's see. This, I'm not sure about this comic. I found it a little uneven, the writing, the characterization. Basically, Miss Fury, what I should have done is I should have looked up the history of this character. It's a Golden Age character that's one of those that the copyrights run out, so basically anybody can write this character and print these comics. But starts off with her in 1943, which seems appropriate, right? But then it keeps flipping throughout the issue between 1943 and 2013. And the reason that is because Miss Fury accidentally or by destiny, if you will, because there's a character that shows up and says some things that makes you think that, but she falls into a time portal of some sort and ends up in 2013. Basically, though, the middle of this is her origin story, and she's a wealthy socialite. Her daddy was a bastard, but she's rich in New York, and she goes to Kenya on her 21st birthday and does the whole Africa thing. She ends up befriending this one tribesman, and they do this magical ritual with some hallucinogens, claiming it would provide her with great superhuman powers. And indeed, that's basically what happens, although it's not clear what those superhuman powers are. But a Black Panther, I don't know if, I assume it's some sort of spirit thing, basically, I'm guessing infuses within her. And that's why you get that black outfit with the pointy ears. Why she's called Miss Fury is explained in terms of what happens to the character, but not really in the sense of I'm taking on this identity that's inspired by this panther spirit from Africa. So I'm not quite sure where those things come in. But anyway, the stuff that is it's like I said, it's illustrated by one gentleman, Jack Herbert, but I found the art kind of inconsistent because the stuff in 1943 is drawn really well, I think, and there's this one splash page where the character is in the bathtub, and it's beautifully drawn. So it looks like that the artist took great care and time on some of these pages, but then the stuff that is more modern day, it looked, I don't know, looks rushed. It doesn't look as finely honed as some of this other stuff, but passable. I found some of the faces of the main character throughout to be inconsistent, but you know, I can forgive that to a point. Let's see. There's a couple more things about this. Like I said, her name, the reason for her name, is explained away to some degree because she apparently had fallen in love with a U.S. soldier, and the implication is he was killed in action, and so she's off fighting Nazi agents in America in 1943 because of this. That's why she's furious, because her loved one was killed. Anyway, at the beginning of the story, this guy shows up talking about time and how the Fuhrer will take over the world now in 1943 and in the future, because it always has happened and it will happen. And it was, I don't know, time travel stuff can be really confusing, and I think that the way it was presented here was confusing. Anyway, so she basically wakes up in 2013, and there's this panel showing her with this big ass gun in her hands, and there seems to be bodies strewn about. There's a tank behind her, and she looks up and she sees these Nazi bombers flying over modern day New York. So that's where the issue ends. Like I said, I've been enjoying some of the Dynamite stuff, especially the Golden Age characters. I'm reading Masks, which is their a collection of Golden Age heroes together in one title. And I've read The Shadow. I read oh gosh, what's the other one? The Spider. Anyway, I thought I'd try this out. I like female-oriented books, and I'm hoping that this will improve a little bit. It's okay. It's not knocking my socks off yet, so we'll see. Next up is Superior Spider-Man, number 7. Dan Slott, of course. Humberto Ramos, Victor Olazaba, and Edgar Delgado doing that. This is interesting for only a couple things. I'm kind of liking the whole Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man angle, although what I'm seeing in this, and I'm also reading Avenging Spider-Man, soon to be, I guess, Superior Spider-Man team up, is Dr. Octopus makes an ass of Spider-Man, and Peter Parker's ghost, or I don't know, his soul or whatever that's still within him, tries to control Dr. Octopus, and often prevents Doc Ock from doing something really drastic. Usually, not always, but usually. And we get more of the same in here. So I'm hoping that something else happens, that we move past that, and we don't keep getting basically the same stuff over and over and over every month. And maybe that's going to be the case here, because there's this one part where Peter prevents Dr. Octopus from killing this character called Cardiac, which I'm not familiar with because I have not read a lot of Spider-Man comics since the early to mid 80s. So apparently he's a well-loved character by some. I was listening to some other people review this title, and they talked about Cardiac and having liked that character. Anyway, so Peter stops Octopus from killing Cardiac, and so Dr. Octopus says, suddenly I'm hearing voices in my hand moving on its own accord. How is this possible? Unless, no, it can't be. So looks like Octavius is finally getting it. So I'm really curious what's going to happen next. The other interesting thing about this issue is the end, where the Avengers have called Spider-Man to task for what's going on recently, and he basically tells them to go to hell and throws Captain America across the room. and then Thor and Spider-Woman and Wolverine and Black Widow, they're all okay, we're gonna stop you now, and Spider-Man says, "You're welcome to try." I'm like, Spider-Man against the Avengers, come on. But it should be an interesting fight. All right, up next, Swamp Thing, number 19. This is the new writer and artist team on here. Let's see, who is that? Sorry. Here we go. Charles Soule is the writer. Kano is the artist, with Matthew Wilson on colors. Okay, so after the interesting thing of the Rot World story with Scott Snyder doing that, we get this new creative team, and it's okay. I liked some of the ideas that were in here. There's a point in here where Swamp Thing shows up in the desert, the Sudan specifically, and there's this oasis in the middle of it. And as he says here, this oasis It's a square mile of tropical rainforest in the middle of one of the driest regions on Earth. The nearest biosphere capable of supporting any of these plants is 1,000 miles from there. And so there's these people fighting over this oasis, and so he walks in the middle of this and determines it should not be here, and basically removes it. Which that was interesting, because here's this life-giving area in the middle of basically a death land, and he takes it away. What the heck? And then later he then he goes back into the green, and he has this nice soliloquy about how he's plant and what the green wants him to do and all this stuff. And he's thinking, well, maybe I need to be around people for a change. And so he where does he go? Metropolis, of course. So he goes there and runs into the Scarecrow, and there's this funny scene that between him and Scarecrow where the Scarecrow keeps gassing him, and of course it doesn't work. And he's like, "I'm a plant. Your gas doesn't work on him." And then finally, Scarecrow. Oh, and what was interesting about it wasn't that he's doing this, but Scarecrow has all these different colored gases, which makes me go to the different colored lantern cores. I don't know why, I just did. But anyway, this orange gas, which is mostly, what do you say, carbon monoxide or dioxide? I can't remember which one it was. Hold on. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, and I skipped a part that I wanted to mention. But I'll go back to that in a second. Yeah, carbon dioxide, which knocks him out. And then, of course, Swamp Thing falls asleep, and then suddenly all these plants and vines start growing throughout Metropolis, which calls Superman's attention. So that's what would be another thing, that's what's going to happen next issue, is this confrontation, I guess. But the one thing I did want to mention, the other thing I wanted to mention, so it wasn't just Metropolis that's full of people. He wants to go there. Alec Holland, I almost called him Michael for some reason. Alec Holland, God, I can't talk. Wants to have a conversation with Superman, and that was a nice throwback, because we got Superman interacting with Swamp Thing early on in this relaunch series, so I thought that was nice. So I'm looking forward to it. But so one more interesting thing. So he takes away that oasis from these people, but then there's this. He goes to, I guess it's some sort of botanical thing in Metropolis. I can't remember if he actually named it, but he's walking through there, and he finds this colony of rats living under one of the banyan trees there, and the trees are calling out, help us, help us. And so Swamp Thing basically calls these roots up and crushes the rats, just pops them like balloons, is how he kind of describes it. And there's blood everywhere, and he starts to wonder, he felt good about it, like the trees did. And so he's wondering, well, what else will the green cause me to do that makes the green feel good, that maybe him as a human being, if he even still is, would not. So I like that aspect of it. I'll try this out, this new creative team out, for probably the first story arc, but it's on a short leash. All right, next up, Thanos Rising #1 by Jason Aaron and Simone Bianchi, with colors by Simone Peruzzi. 2 Simones on one book. Okay, just want to say, first off, lovely art. I really dig the art on this. It has an almost painted quality to it. All right, but as far as the story goes, I like seeing Thanos written by someone other than Jim Starlin. It was an interesting take on it. We're getting Thanos' origin story here, where he was born. He's a young lad. Something traumatic happens, and that starts him on the path to where he becomes, the Thanos that we all know and love. Let's see. So, how would you like it? In the instant. A few minutes after your birth, your father, who is cooing over you, adoring you, hands you to your mother, and your mother takes one look at you and grabs a knife and tries to kill you. Well, that's what happens to poor Thanos. which reminds me, I thought it was an interesting take on Mentor, that character, Thanos' father. I don't know, because he comes across here as, I don't know, kind of crazy. That's not even right, but it was just a weird character interpretation of Mentor that I've never seen before. Because he was like, this is my baby boy, and there's nothing wrong with him. How dare you imply that there's some sort of genetic mutation here? And he's great. But then the mother, of course, goes crazy, and they essentially put her into an institution. Which there's this really creepy scene later in the comic where Thanos goes and visits her and just talks to her, like nothing's going on, and she's there in a straitjacket and crying and freaking out because there's this monster next to her. So she knows something that no one else seems to. And then of course we get basically Thanos as a young boy, and he's interacting with the other children of Titan. And what I really appreciated regarding what Jason Aaron has done is that usually you get the whole, he's different, and then the kids pick on him, and then that's a reason for him to go bad or something. And that's not what happens here. So I really appreciate that lack of a stereotypical storyline. So the kids actually are interested in him because he's different. Because Titan, they're these race of long-lived creatures, beings, essentially immortal, and so anything different is just really interesting to them. So Thanos is portrayed as a bit of a loner because he's different. He's an artist. He likes to draw. He's kind of sensitive. They do this dissection of these lizard creatures that live on Titan, and the first time he encounters that, he runs off crying and he's upset. This is where he encounters this one female on Titan, whose name I've looked through the comic 3 times now, and I can't see where they've named her, which that's interesting. But she's kind of pushing him for, I'm not sure what reason yet, so I'm hoping we'll find that out. But she's kind of pushing him down that path just a little bit. Anyway, she tells him about these caves where she goes to, they're interesting caves, and they're quiet and solitude, and you can ponder your thoughts. And so Thanos, I assume, has gone there already, but then they're so interesting that he takes his other friends along with him, and then there's a cave-in, and something happens. Or I'm just gonna spoil it. So if you don't want to listen, you should stop or fast forward a few minutes. But there's a cave-in, and he digs himself out, but his friends don't make it. And what happens is there's like I said, these lizard creatures that live all around. Well, they're trapped in there too. So they have to eat. Guess what? Thanos finds his friends a bit chewed on, and goes back and he's very upset about it. At one point, there's a panel showing him sitting there all by himself, and one of the lizard creatures comes up to him, because they're just, like I said, they're all over the place. They're kind of like cats or dogs, wandering around, and they show him with his hands kind of going, like this towards the creature, but he stops himself, because he's not a murderer, right? It's not that particular lizard that did this dastardly deed, but the unnamed girl basically says, you know what? If you love them, you wouldn't stop yourself from doing what is right. And so he goes back in the cave and he slaughters those lizard creatures, and thus putting him on that path, I suppose. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I really like this Thanos origin story, so I'm really interested to see where the rest of these issues go. Okay, I have 3 more issues, and I don't have much to say about them, but I did read them, so I thought I would mention them. Shadowman number 6. This is by a bunch of people, and this may be a problem with my enjoyment of it, but this is written by Justin Jordan, artists Patrick Zurcher, Lee Garbett, and Neil Edwards. And if you have read this, and even if you haven't, I'm going to tell you, the art is different every every several pages, and that's something I do not like unless there is a purpose to it, and that I'll get to that in a second, because that is something that happens in World's Finest. So you get all these different styles. I like one of them. Well, two of them are okay. One of them I just don't care for, and it looks like that style is going to be the one that's coming up in future issues. So Shadowman is one of those Valiant titles that I've been getting because my friend Lee recommended the relaunch stuff, starting with Harbinger, and so I've been getting those on his recommendation at first, and then also the company that I buy my comics from gives me 50%. Well, you too if you order it from DCBS, but it gives you a 50% discount on if you buy all of these Valiant titles. So I've been getting all of them. Excuse me, including Shadowman. But Shadowman is one of those bunch of titles from Valiant that I'm not all that keen on, but I'm still getting it because I get the discount. But it's okay. I didn't really. The main character of Shadowman has just basically gotten around to accepting that he is now the Shadowman, although they've not really explored what that means to him. It's become more about the plot instead of the character. And that's where I start to turn off on any comic, when the character isn't explored more, when the character isn't pushed forward by the story, by the plot, then I get bored. And I'm getting to that point with this comic. So I may be dropping that soon and losing that 50% discount, but that's okay. Next to last, I did talk about this just briefly. Masks. This is the limited series. This is number 5. Again, this is written by Chris Robertson, art by Dennis Calero. Yeah, art by Dennis Calero. So it's interesting to see all these Golden Age characters in here, including Miss Fury. You get the Green Hornet, you get the Spider, the Shadow, and I think Black Bat's in here. Zorro is in here. There's some others whose name I don't remember at the moment. It's an interesting story, but this issue was not a whole lot going on, and I read it and like I don't know what's going on here. Where are we going with this? So it seemed very much a filler issue. So maybe they didn't need this one, and they should have decreased the limited series by one issue. I don't know. Anyway, all right, last one. World's Finest by Paul Levitz. That's the writer, and this is where you get the different artists, but there's a reason for this. So you get Ken Lashley, whom I did not know. I don't recognize that name, and Barry Kitson doing art. Oh wait, looks like we have a couple. Whoa, we have Robson Roca doing pencils on 4 pages, and Wayne Foucher doing inks on those same pages that Mr. Roca did. So, wow. Matt Yackey and Hi-Fi on colors. You have to wonder when you have to throw all these artists in, what's going on. You know, was the book late from the writer? Did the main artists, were they late? So they had to bring in these other guys. Yeah, it's not a good sign. I mean, it can happen every once in a while. Sure, things come up, right? But got to be careful of that. But you have, what I really like about this though is Barry Kitson doing his part in this. I just like Barry Kitson stuff. He makes a nice looking Power Girl, I think. But the problem with this is it's kind of like Shadowman and Mask. It's like, it's okay. The story revolves around Michael Holt, the Mr. Terrific, and one trying to figure out where he's gone and whatnot, and Power Girl Karen Starr is trying to acquire technology from Holt Industries. The only really interesting thing about this, besides the Barry Kitson art in it, is that Michael Holt, who's been missing for a while now, because I think he's trapped on Earth 2. I want to say that. I'm not positive of that. But suddenly Michael Holt's there, well, you saw the cover. They're kissing, which actually, hold on. Oh yeah, it does not happen in this issue. It looks like it might, but then Michael turns into Desaad. There you go, the new looking Desaad. So his name is Desaad, and want to guess what comes next? Yeah, I can guess. So it's okay. This was an okay story. I really wish they would. I don't know. It feels like that this comic is kind of floundering. It doesn't have a real direction to it, other than just the general. They're trying to get back home kind of thing. But then nothing really ever happens with that. They just kind of have these little adventures that kind of interfere with their goal of getting home. But I don't know. I expect better out of Mr. Levitz, quite honestly. So, all right, that's it for the comics that I have read that came out the week of April 3rd. I'm currently reading the comics that came out the week of April 10th, and so I'll be doing another one of these down the road. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Leave comments if you'd like. You can also email me at longboxreview@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, I guess that's it. Go read some comics. Bye.